You're joking, aren't you? It's the Teesside Chef. Get off your horse and drink your milk. Literally, if you want to stop your mouth from burning, because it's time for John Wayne's spicy chili cheese squares. The recipe comes from the man himself. Honest. And I didn't get the recipe directly off John Wayne, of course. I read it in Asbestos Weekly or some other magazine from the 1980s while I was sitting in a doctor's waiting room suffering from impetigo. I ripped out the recipe and vowed to make it one day, and that day is today. So I've started here with 250 grams of jalapenos in a pan that is around 11 inches by 8, and that's roughly 28 centimetres by 20 centimetres, give or take. And I'm spreading the same weight, 250 grams of grated cheddar cheese on top here, and you may well have to adjust the amounts to fit whatever particular sized dish you're using, but to be honest, you can be a bit of a maverick with the jalapenos and cheese. That John Wayne was a bit of a maverick, so they say, and if you're less than 100 years old and you've never heard of him, then thank your lucky stars that you never had to sit through one of his films on a Sunday afternoon because there were only 3 TV channels and no internet. But enough of all that reminiscing. I've got 6 eggs in here and I'm adding 125 millilitres of double cream to that, and then I'm going to go in with a half a teaspoon of salt and a good pinch of pepper, and then we can have a good whisk up of these ingredients here. And yeah, I can't say that I was a fan of the Duke. Even as a child, I was perplexed how someone so out of shape could be a matinee idol. But all the middle-aged men around me at the time used to absolutely lap him and his catchphrases up. I still don't understand why loads of Northern English men identified so closely with an American cowboy who wore his pants too high, but it was a different time, I suppose. Just pouring this mix over the cheese and jalapenos now. Oh yeah, and get this, you're not going to believe this. Various sources say he used to smoke 100 cigarettes a day. Almost everyone in Hollywood did back then. Apparently, some of the actors used to smoke so much on set that they threw up and then just cracked on. Cancer did sadly eventually get John Wayne in the end though, and he is credited with coining the term the Big C. But it's unknown if it was related to the chain smoking or radiation he was exposed to when shooting a film too close to a nuclear bomb test site. People say the world's a dangerous place now. So I've put that in the oven now for about 15 minutes at 190 degrees Celsius fan setting, and that's about 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And while our chili cheese squares are cooking, well, I mean, it's a big chili cheese rectangle at the moment, but it will be chili cheese squares, I promise. Anyway, while that's cooking, I'm just slicing up some cherry tomatoes for it, and they're going to go on at the halfway cooking stage, which is now. And as you can see, the chili cheese squares, or rectangle, are set on top, and I'm going to go ahead and place my tomatoes on top of it now. And if you want this to look as tickety-boo as possible, place them in a way that will look the part when this is cut, and I plan to cut 12 pieces out of this in a 3x4 configuration, so 8 pieces of sliced tomato across the x-axis and 6 down the y-axis will work well here if my calculations are correct. And just to give it those film-style looks that John Wayne didn't have in my opinion, I'm going to sprinkle some dried basil on top before this goes back in the oven, and we'll be putting it back in the oven for another 15 minutes until we start to see a light golden colour on top and the tomatoes are dried out, and when it comes out it should look a little something like this. And this is pretty good as a snack food, a party food, or a breakfast food, or you can just enjoy it around the campfire after you've massacred a load of indigenous people and then branded them selfish for not giving up their land to you without a fight. So after this has had about 10 to 15 minutes to cool down, we need to get it out, cut it into the traditional squares. So first off, just go around the edges, and I find that a blunt knife works best for this. And if you click like or subscribe while I'm doing this, you'll be my all-action American hero, even if you're not American. And as you can see, I'm using these tomatoes that I placed delicately earlier as a sort of a guide to be able to cut this into 12 almost identical sort of squares. And without further ado, let's give you a proper close-up, and there you can see that cheesy, creamy, spicy goodness. And if you're frightened by the chilies in this recipe, just remember the famous quote from John Wayne himself: "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway." So get your mouth around this and think about the consequences later. Thanks for watching, pilgrims. Ta-ra.